Hello, you've likely heard of the word game Wordle, in which the player has 6 tries to guess an unknown 5-letter word called Wordle. Here, I will show how to make a game like Wordle. We call it the Wordl Inventor, and we drop the letter E along the way. The game itself is fairly simple. After the guess is entered, each letter box of that guessed word is colored in one of the 3 colors: gray if that letter is not in the Wordle, yellow if it is but at a different position, and green if both the letter and the position are matched. In this example, we started with the word avoid, and as you can tell, none of these letters is in the Wordle. In the second try, we had more luck. Both R and U are in the correct positions, and S is in the Wordle but not in the right position. In the third try, we matched 4 letters. We'll finish this at the end, but we want to really focus on how to get this game coded. Before we do that, we first need to figure out what is it that we need to do to make it work, or to devise an algorithm before getting into the actual coding. So this is what we're going to do. Every time the guess word is entered, first we need to find which one is the latest try. To do that, we will scan all these text boxes and form a list of the updated guesses from top to bottom. Then we will invert the list and find the first guess word that is not an empty field. So in this case, that would be crust. Next, we will examine a letter by letter of that current word against the occurrences of each of these letters in the Wordle. In each step, we will form a list of the current letter indices in the guessed word and the list of the current letter in the Wordle. The first list cannot be empty because simply we start from that letter guessed word, so it has to have at least one of those letters, while the Wordle list can be empty if that current letter is not in the Wordle. Once we have these two lists of indices for each letter, we will make decisions whether each letter box in that guessed word should be colored gray, yellow, or green. We repeat this procedure for each letter in the guessed word and we're done. Well, nearly done. We still need to check whether the end game is reached, and there are two possible outcomes of the game. The guessed word matched the Wordle, that means that all the boxes in the guessed word will be green, or the player already made 6 guesses and did not guess the Wordle. And that's it. Now, is this the only algorithm that would execute this game? Absolutely not. Is this the best one? Arguably not either. But it should give you an idea how to approach this and hopefully make it better yourself. Before we switch to the blocks editor, let's take a quick look at the design editor and see how we created this layout that we see on the screen. So first, we use a label to title our game Wordl Inventor, and then you see we arrange horizontal layouts for each row. In each of these horizontal layouts, we have 5 letter boxes, and you'll notice that all these boxes are indexed by their row and the column. So 1, 3 means that this is the text box that it's in the first row and in the third column, meaning this one, right? You also notice that we added some blank boxes in between, and this is simply to create this space and create this matrix arrangement that we see on the screen. Besides the letter boxes, the only other thing there is essentially a button that we're going to press whenever we enter a new word. So it is fairly simple, minimalistic, just as the real Wordle game. So let's see in the blocks editor what we need to execute to basically run this algorithm that we just explained. First, we need to do some housekeeping, and we're going to set up the text boxes global variable, which essentially combines all these text boxes into a list that has rows and columns. So for each row of this list, we have a column that basically combines all the letters of the same word. So 1 through 1, 5, to 1 to through 5, and so on. So in the end, text boxes is going to be arranged essentially it's going to be our table that we have on the front on the screen. Now we can also enlarge this for the time being so we see a little bit more. What else do? We gonna make sure that whenever the game is initialized, that we basically have everything set and ready for us. So whenever the application is started, we want to make sure that each field, so in each row, and for each row in each column, that each text box color is reverted back to default. This is 0. Each box is also empty. This is set here by the text, and also it's enabled, ready for us to enter letters. And also this is a little help for the player. We're gonna basically call focus for the first box 1, 1, which essentially is a hint where the game should be started, right? Then we need to create a variable of our global guesses. So these guesses are essentially these 6 words that would be created. And every time the word is entered, we're going to be replacing these global guesses with whatever is the new set of words. We basically scan the whole thing every single time. Then we're going to initialize Wordle itself, right? So global Wordle is going to be whatever we pick for that run. We started here as an empty string, and then we're going to have a variable green, which essentially is a count of how many green text boxes we have, how many letters we guessed in the right positions. And a variable end essentially signals the end of the game when all 6 tries were used unsuccessfully. So it starts at 0, and when the end of the game is reached, we're going to convert it to 1, and that's how we're going to know that the end of the game is reached. Besides that, we obviously need to create possible values for Wordle. So this is where we initialize these variable Wordles. And here we just placed 5 of them. You can place as many as you want. So essentially, we're going to be picking a random word from the Wordles to be our Wordle for the current game. And you'll see that in a moment. And besides that, the other thing is we want to define our own colors. So we defined our own green color and our own yellow color by assigning the RGB values for that particular color. Okay, so once we did all the preparations, let's go to the main code. This is our main event. Main event handler is when we press the enter button, right? So the first thing that we're doing here when we press the enter button, we're checking whether the end of the game is reached. So the end of the game is reached when the global green is 5, all 5 letters are guessed, or the global end is 1, which means all 6 tries were made unsuccessfully. If this is true, the end of the game is reached, and we're basically doing the same reset right here that we just did when the app is started. So we don't need to explain, it's exactly the same thing right here. So we're basically resetting it and getting it ready for the player to play the game again if he or she prefers that. Also, we're resetting the global green to 0, global end to 0, setting the focus back on 1, 1 so that the game can be replayed, and also changing the text for the enter button to enter. And we'll see why a little bit later, because we changed it at the end of the game to something else, again, to give a hint to the player. And if not, so if this is not true, that the end of the game is reached, then we proceed to else right here, and we start basically processing and going through our algorithm that we explained what we're doing. So what do we do first? As we said, we scan through all the text boxes in that table, and this is what we're doing here. For the global guesses, we're going to replace whatever was current, and we're going to pick from our table, essentially from the global text boxes. For each row, we're going to pick 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this is essentially letters in order from the corresponding word, and combine them into a single word right here, join them. And in the end, we're going to have essentially a list that's going to have 6 words, or as many words as there are, plus additional empty words or empty spaces. So the next thing we do, we need to realize if this was our first try. If this was the first try to guess the word, which is checked right here, if the second one is empty, then we're going to basically select, we're going to pick our global Wordle. Global Wordle goes as a random pick from our set of global Wordles that we just explained. And that's how we set the word or Wordle that we need to guess. Now, what we need to do, as we said, the next thing, we need to find what is the last guessed word that was entered in that list of 6 possible ones. So this is what is done here. We go through our reversed list of the global guesses, and we're looking for the first item that is not empty, because that is going to be our last entered word if we reverse the list of the global guesses. Okay, so if uh, if this item that is picked, that last word, has index 1 in the correct in the correct order, in the reversed list, that means that we reached the 6th guess, and we're setting the global end to 1. So this is our signal that we reached the end of the game. So this is the last try. Okay, if not, we just proceed. So what do we need to do? We set global green to 0. This is the count of the green letters of the correct guesses and positions. And we're going to go here through each of the letters from 1 through 5 of the current item, which this item here, which is our current guessed word. So what do? We check for each of these letters, we check the box background color to be 0, which means it's a default. It is not already decided which color it is. And then we can proceed in searching for what it's supposed to be and does it match any letter in the Wordle. So as we said, we're going to create 2 lists. One list is indices for the Wordle, and this is the list of the indices for the guessed word. And they're initialized here with random numbers. It doesn't matter, and we will just gonna be replacing them. So what we need to do, we need basically to change these indices to what are the indices of the current letter, one of these 5, in the global Wordle and in the guessed word, which is the item. To do that, we created the procedure, which we called findIndices. It's a good as a practice, and also it's convenient since we need to use it twice. So we're going to show here how we did this procedure and what does this procedure do. So the procedure findIndices takes the word and takes the letter that we're trying to find in this word and returns the indices of this letter in this word. So the indices can be empty if there is no that letter in the word, or it can be indices wherever this letter shows up in the word, right? So what do? We created these random indices at the beginning, and then we need to replace them such that we gonna search this word for the letter going from the front, and then we're going to reverse this word and then search again sort of backwards, right, from the back of the word. So we're going to find one index from the front right here, and then in the second try, we're going to find the index in reverse. So what do we do now? If we have two finds, okay, this is right here. Do we have two finds? Is the second index not 0? Yes, then what do we need to do? The one that was in reverse, we need to reverse it back so that it's the correct index, right? So this is what we're doing with the second one. Since it was found in reverse, we're just reverting it back to be correct index. And then we're checking if the indices in the in the sequence that was found are the same as if we invert these indices, which means that the two indices are the same, which means that we found the same index in going forward and in reverse, or in other words, that there is only one occurrence in this letter in the word. If that's the case, then what we want to set the second index to 0 because they are the same and they just double the single occurrence, right? And then finally, what we want to do, if we have anyone that is 0 in the index, we want basically to remove it because we don't want to have index that is basically 0, so that there is no index, there is no that letter in the word. In the end, after this procedure is done, indices can be empty. There is no letter in the word, can have one index if there is only one occurrence, or can have two indices in here if there are two occurrences in the letter in the word. So this is basically where we go back here, and the way that we basically found these indices for the global Wordle, and then we found these indices for the item, which is our current guessed word. Okay, and from here now, we're basically just comparing these two lists of indices. So the first one, which is fairly simple, right? We're asking if the indices in the Wordle are empty. So that means there is no letter in the Wordle, right? If this is correct, then that means that we're supposed to color the background of that letter in our guessed word to be gray. So this letter does not exist in the Wordle. Okay, so this is checked here, right? The second check we're doing whether the length of the list for the indices for the Wordle and for the guessed word are the same. That means we can have one index in one and one in the other, or two in the Wordle and two indices in the guessed word. And then we have to check for each of them depending of what are the possibilities. So we're going to for each index in the guessed word, and then we're going for each of them, we're going through each of the index in the Wordle. So first, what we're checking here is whether this maybe field is already decided by some previous check. So we're checking whether this field is already green, and we're saying, well, if it's not green, then we're going to proceed. If it's green, then it's already decided, and we're going to skip all this that we're doing underneath. So if it's not green, not decided, then we proceed and basically checking whether this index in the guessed word is the same as the index in the Wordle. If the answer is yes, that means that this letter is in the correct position. So we're going to basically color the background color to our global green. And as every time we index global green color, we're going to also increment our global green variable by 1. So this is what is done here. So this is taken care of, right? If not, then we need to color this background color in yellow, which means, yes, this letter is in the Wordle, but it's not in the right position. So in that case, we're going to color it yellow. Okay. So if it's not the same number of indices in both, then we have two more options left, right? And two more options are that we have, and we're checking right here, that if the number of indices in our guess is 1 and the number of indices in the Wordle is 2. And then we'll just proceed through the same examination here. Well, okay, if it is, we're going to start by saying, okay, this is yellow, and then we're going to later decide down here whether maybe it's not just yellow, maybe it's green. So, right, this is the check right here. And if this check proves true, we're going to change this from yellow to green, because we know it at least it has to be yellow. So if we change it to green, we increment our global green variable by 1, right, as we do every time. And then if it's not 1 in the guessed word number of indices and 2 in the index of the Wordle, we have this option that we have 2 indices, 2 occurrences in our guessed word, and only 1 occurrence in the Wordle. And then again, we go through the same thing. We're setting the global yellow first because it has to be at least yellow, and the first one, and then we set the second one as to be gray because there's only one occurrence in the Wordle. And after that, we check, well, maybe it's not just yellow, maybe it could be also green. So this is the check that is done here. And if it turns out correct, we change this global green, we change the color to global green, we increment global green variable by 1, as always. And we also remove this one from the list because it's decided. Whenever a field is decided to be green, it's final. So there's no more checking, no more checking of that field. And the other one is set to gray in that case if one of them is decided to be green, if it's correct position as well. And okay, this goes on, as I said, in this long loop for each of the letters. Once we exhaust all the 5 letters, then we just have this last check here to check whether we guess the whole Wordle. So if our global green variable is 5, that means yes, we guessed all the 5 letters, we guessed the complete Wordle. So what we do here, we're going to basically change the color of each letter in this final guess to white, which is done here just to signify, okay, we reached the end of the game and this is the Wordle. We guessed it right. Then we're going to change the text on the enter button to play, which essentially we signal the player, okay, do you want to play another round? And if so, just press this button, right? And if not, if the Wordle is not guessed completely, we also have to check whether we reached the end of the game. So is our global end variable equal to 1? So if it is, we again set our text of the button to play again, because we signal, okay, this is the end of the game, and you have an option to replay the game again and restart the whole process. This option, by the way, is not in the original Wordle game, but it is ended here. It is added here. Sorry. And this is pretty much it. So let's just quickly go here and finish this game. So, okay, we had 3 tries. We guessed 4 correct. So let's see here if we say, well, maybe the correct word that we're looking for is trust. And we enter trust. We press the enter. Okay, this is our enter button, and voila. So this is the correct word. You see the color of the letters changed to white as we programmed. You see also that the enter button changed text to play. Okay, this is a signal for the player. You want to play again. And let's say we want to play again, so we're going to press this letter, press this button, and you see everything's reset. And the first box is highlighted, and it gives us a clue. Okay, start here by entering your first guess of the new game. At the end, let's try to take a quick look and pan across the whole code. So for that, we're gonna first go back to this full view and then zoom out so you can see much more at once. Okay, so we're going back here, right at the top. So as we've seen before, right, this is the very top is the setting that we did, preset, initialized, set the variables that we need, set the colors and so on, right? So this was right at the very top. And then underneath is the main code, right? So the main code is all bundled under this event, which is when we press this enter button. And as we went through it, we basically checking first whether the end of the game is reached. Then if not, we scanning through the whole set of text boxes right here and creating the 6 guess words. This ends right here. Then we basically checking if that was our first guess right here. If it was the first guess, then we need to create our Wordle, and that's what's done here. And then next thing that is done is basically we finding what was the latest word that was entered. This is right here in the inverse list of our global guesses. And then once we find that, we're going here through each letter of that word, and we basically checking for each letter how many times this letter shows up in the Wordle, which is created by these indices indw, and then how many times it shows up in the guessed word, which is indg. For that, we use the procedure that we called findIndices, and that procedure was explained. It's right here on the right. And we did explain that, how it works. We end up with these two lists of indices, right? And then after that, it's simply comparing these two lists of indices and figuring out whether there is essentially 0, 1, and 2 for the Wordle, and possible answers are 1 and 2 as the number of the indices for the guessed word. Once we go through these checks, essentially we figure out whether the word exists or the letter actually exists in the Wordle, and whether it's in the right place. Based on that, we decide on the color. And once we go through all the 5 letters in the current word, that is finished. So this goes all the way up to here. And here we're finally done with those checks. And then what's left is we check whether we found the full Wordle, if the global green is 5, or if not, if the end of the game is reached by basically exhausting all 6 tries, which is done here. And after that, we're set. We just go back to the beginning. Before we say goodbye, I'm just going to remind you that there is a tutorial that pretty much covers all the aspects of coding that were done here: global local variables, control blocks, working with text, lists, manipulating lists, even creating colors, RGB colors, And anything possible you can think of that is used here is covered in that tutorial. So you can, if you wish, you can go and brush up on any of these topics in the tutorial. So this is it for now, and bye until the next time.